everyone. My name is Janessa Palmieri, and on behalf of Peraton, we're proud to partner with CybHER to bring you these weekly CybHER conversations. For those of you who are joining us today for the first time, CybHER is a program out of Dakota State University in Madison, South Dakota, that works to motivate, empower, and educate young women in cybersecurity. Just a reminder, at any point during the program, you can ask a question via the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. I am very honored to introduce today's speaker, Renee Wynn. Renee Wynn is an independent board member with over 30 years of leadership experience in environmental policy, global information technology, and cybersecurity operations, supply chain risk management, and ESG. Renee has extensive knowledge about guiding government agencies through complex digital transformations. She's led programs at the Environmental Protection Agency and served as the CIO at an iconic agency, the NASA. Renee, thank you for being here today.
Janessa, thank you so much for that introduction, and it's so fabulous to be here. So I will tell you, as somebody who's in Washington, D.C. area, I've been to North Dakota and I used to spend my summers in Minnesota. So I've been fairly close to South Dakota, but not quite there myself. So it's great to be here, and thank you to the sponsor, Peraton. I know them well. In fact, I was just telling Janessa this afternoon, I had a conversation with one of the program managers there. So I was excited to catch up with him because I hadn't seen him in a long time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction, and I'm going to talk about an aspect of cybersecurity that is very new business and a great opportunity for everybody to think about, and that's cybersecurity in space. And I mean outer space. And here helping me today is my celestial buddy, Mars. It says Mars on his foot. And then I've also brought my celestial buddy, Earth, because this year is the year of the Earth, given all the climate change issues that we as humans need to really start to think about our own footprint in that. So they're going to help me out a little bit here when I do some of the talking. So let me get started with a little bit of my presentation. There we go. Let's see. All right, we made it work, I hope. Did it? Yes. All right, we're set to roll. So cybersecurity is out of this world. And that's what I told you I was going to talk about space. But maybe first a little bit about me. A little bit more than Janessa said. That's my professional me. My other me is to let everybody know that I went to DePauw University in Indiana. And I chose to go there because I decided to leave the Washington, D.C. area, which is a place where I grew up. So I would have different experiences, and it definitely was a different experience. It was through DePauw that I got to go to school in Germany, where I took a couple of classes in German, caught most of it, and took a couple of classes in English. Very happy for those classes. And interestingly enough, as having been the chief information officer for NASA, I had a Bachelor of Arts in economics, and I took no more classes after that because I can't sit still very well. I'm an advocate for education. I am constantly learning. Right now, I'm taking a class on Mesopotamia, and I'm also taking a class on serving as a corporate director. So always learn and always read. And read what you want to read. There's plenty of things to do. I'm married, so I have a husband. I've been married for 31 years. I have a son who's 29 years old, and he works for a competitor of Peraton at Leidos. I love to snow ski. I run several days a week. I lift weights, and I love to cook. Since I love to cook, I have to do the other pieces to go along with it. I retired from the United States federal government. As you already heard, I was a chief information officer where I did global and off the globe infrastructure services, including cybersecurity. And we talked a little bit about this, but the other thing for you guys to know is pretty soon I'm going to be a TEDx speaker, and I'm scared to death of this one. I've got to do a 10-minute discussion about cybersecurity and its importance to and benefits to humanity. So maybe today will be my dry run. So what is cybersecurity? You just have to set the context, and I think you all are smart, and I'm sure you know what it is. But it's any prevention used to, anything used to prevent an attack through our devices, the ether world, our laptops, my Apple Watch, it could be my iPhone in a case, so if it drops, we've got it. And what are the drivers for a cyber attack? Fun, fame, and or fortune. That's it. That always falls into one or many of those categories. And it's a combination of efforts, both technical processes and people, like social engineering. I might call Janessa up and say, hey, Janessa, I understand you're at school and you worked for Peraton and you got to see their cyber van. Oh, that's so great. Well, I'd love for you to do XYZ if you just give me your password, right? And next thing you know, I've taken something from her, probably her beautiful, precious identity, and mine's been stolen already, and China has a lot of it as well. I've been a target of many an attack. Part of it was my position. Part of it was just because I'm a member of the United States federal government. And the thing that people forget, it is also about changing data. Let's say our grades on our final exam or on our report card, which none of you I know would do, but changing data is another element, and data integrity is absolutely important when it comes to humanity. You've got science, the data that we're gathering about COVID. Is it really that data? The data we bring back from space, like my buddy Mars has 2 rovers on it right now and a helicopter Ingenuity on it. And we want that data to come back with its full integrity. If we're ever going to imagine putting humans on that planet, we'll be kind to Mars, because there is somebody whose job that's called planetary protection. So cybersecurity attacks information technology. I've already mentioned a few examples of that. There's operational technology, your lighting controls. My lights are on here. For the mobile launch unit at our Kennedy Space Center at NASA has 400,000 sensors on it. Lots of electronics on that one. And each one of those sensors is a piece of operational technology, like the cryogenics to cool it during launch, to start the water processes associated with a launch, or release the umbilical cords just before that last time it leaves the face of this beautiful Earth. And scientific equipment as well is operational technology. And then the Internet of Things, the new things. My garage door has a processor on it, which has not been put on my home network because I don't need it to. I do not need to open my garage while I'm talking to you guys right now. I'll just do it from my car. Your car needs to be protected as well. Maybe you have a thermostat called Nest, a thermostat on that, or you've got a doorbell ring or something like that. And our medical wearables, our heart rate monitors, which my father has on him. Those are all Internet of Things, and we must think about how to protect them as best we can and still be able to use them, which I heard a lot about when I was doing cybersecurity. So I mentioned I was going to talk a little bit about space. Space is a very harsh environment. And back in the 50s and 60s, when we were launching and starting our amazing American space exploration programs through NASA, and putting the first humans on the moon. And I'm looking forward to, looks like 2026 is when the first high-heeled boots will be hitting the moon and stepping in that regolith. They won't be high-heeled. That would be very unsafe, but they will be female moon boots that we will be putting on the moon, which I'm very excited to see. But let's look at space communication and why cybersecurity is now absolutely a risk in space. And it can turn satellites into weapons. And that is by directing the satellite in a way that could cause harm to another satellite or to another another thing like the International Space Station, which is in space as well. So how does it work? Well, you see over here to the left, the internet and the gateway piece, right? That's data coming down from space. That data coming down from space and showing you the user terminals and the lands and all of that. That data also travels through the internet. Well, that data comes down and it is encrypted. Well, if somebody breaks that encryption, you got a problem. Not all the data are encrypted, so you got a potential risk there. The other thing is the data going there is navigational data information. So they want to maybe make those solar panels that you see turn a little bit of a direction because they need a little bit more power to do something, reposition the satellite, maybe turn on a sensor, or maybe try and fix it. Several times, you can see in the news if you follow NASA, we've had to do repairs and reboots on our satellites, and one of them was millions of miles from this planet, and they successfully able to do that. So that just shows you data movement and ways that you can, those are the risks. So the next one, you need to understand space is part of our everyday life. So food Farmers rely on satellite images to help with soil moisture, which would help them with irrigation. Weather is tracked over time, and you can look at trends data for weather. And also for logistics, moving trucks around with our food on it. And where are those trucks, and how do I redirect the trucks if a highway is closed? And that's the GPS. Our television is also brought to us by satellite. I don't know about you guys, but over the last 2 years, I relied on my content providers quite a bit through the satellites in order to give me some entertainment, since I couldn't hang out with my friends as much as I had in the past. So weather, as I've already talked about, and earth observation, and I mentioned an example of that, which is soil moisture. But we're studying the earth at all times, so we learn more about our beautiful planet. An earth friend here says, oh, thanks for learning about me. I've got lots to share. So then, I already mentioned these are growing risks associated with satellite. We talked about the communication links, and I mentioned about weaponization. Well, boy, what about weaponization? What do you mean by that? Well, you could do something like you could blow up a satellite. Maybe it's the satellite you operate, but that debris could create a problem for this satellite that you're looking at right now. And you could do that intentionally, not unintentionally. And that's what weaponization would be. Satellites have capabilities as well. They have sensors on them. And recently, both Japan and the United States sent satellites that had a robot in it. And that robot went down on an asteroid. And that robot was on the asteroid taking a sample of that asteroid, and it went back up to its satellite. And those samples, actually the Japanese sample is now back at Earth already. And the one from the United States done by NASA will be back at Earth in 2023, I think that is. And so those samples, right, that capability of landing on an asteroid, very cool technology, right? But in that, you see where if I can land something, I might be able to put a really bad thing on that satellite if I can get close enough to it with my robotics. So that's how the threats in space have changed through cybersecurity and advancing. The way I look at all of this is just an opportunity. These are your job opportunities, and they're tons of fun. I got to tell you, the last few years that I spent in the federal government, they wore me out. I was really, really tired delivering to our astronauts on the International Space Station. We delivered them Office 365. We shipped them laptops, and we helped with some filming on Space Station as well. Very proud of the work that my team has done in support of our astronauts. But you see, the United States has people up there right now, so do other countries. And when you have people in space, you have to take special care of what goes on in space with debris. In fact, last summer, debris hit the Canadian arm, is what it's called, on International Space Station, put a hole in it, and they had to go investigate it. And recently, they had to delay a spacewalk because of the concerns of the safety for the spacewalk when the astronauts leave the space station, go out and make repairs, gather data and things like that. Well, when they leave the safety of the space station, we have to make sure that there is no danger of debris actually hitting them. And we've all seen that movie, or if you haven't, go ahead and watch a space movie. That debris issue is really, really a big issue. So we have to take special care because we have humans in space. Now, China also has humans in space, and that's a recent development. All right, so the risk and resiliency, this is all about risk management. It's not about not doing cool things. It's about doing cool things and think about the risks. There's the typical engineering risks. Well, good engineering practices identify those risks, and frankly, good project management. All holidays, let's talk about Thanksgiving. They have risks with it. Are you going to get your turkey out of the oven in time? Are you going to drop the stuffing on the kitchen floor like I did a couple of years ago and had very sad faces since they love the stuffing part? And so everything has risks, and the idea is to practice identifying those risks and figuring out, can you mitigate them? Or maybe you'll just watch those risks. All information technology, operational technology, and IoT are vulnerable to an attack. All of them are, you just assume that it is. So think like a bad guy and figure out how to protect yourself, or go ahead and say, I'm willing to take that risk, because that's another option to take, is I'm going to go ahead and take that risk. I myself have jumped out of an airplane. That was a big risk. I was happy that I did it. I was also very glad to land on the ground. But it is a very cool experience. So if anybody's got that risk-taking gene in them, that is definitely one of those things you might want to try and do. It's a great way to see Earth. I won't bring him back. He's being a little shy right now. And it's also about data protection, because we talked about data integrity. And the big questions in cybersecurity from a position like myself, and maybe your future position, is always know who and what are on your network. And when we were doing some work on NASA's network, we found some cryptocurrency on it. We found some websites that were inappropriate on it. We found some software on it that we shouldn't have had on our network. And then the who on the network are robots, and that's okay to have it. And you and I are on that network, and you have identities that we track those identities to make sure you are who you are, and we pull that together. So always know who and what's on your network if you're going to do network management, and all cybersecurity professionals need to make sure that they figure out the answers to those questions as well. And there are other risks with managing IT and operational technology, and squirrels and backhoes. And I can tell you, I've actually had 2 pretty significant problems related to a backhoe taken out, the electricity on a critical building, and we really did have a squirrel chew through a line. We found out that we didn't have redundant power in one of our facilities. So there's risks everywhere, whether it's cyber driven or driven by our friends driving backhoes, or our friends that we consider in our squirrel family. So that's a little bit of my presentation about space and cybersecurity, and bringing it down to our beautiful planet. So from there, I think what I want to do is, answer some questions.
Yes, Renee, that was an amazing presentation. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your life with us. It's been so interesting. Like you've done so much, and it's just so awesome that you're able to share all of it with us today. So I have a few questions for you. Let's start with, what is the coolest thing you've ever done? Like, it can be work related, life related, anything.
Well, the coolest thing is certainly being a mom, right? Yeah, I look at you guys and all the things that you get to do. And I know sometimes parents are cranky, but I got to say that's probably the coolest experience. And also, being married and learning how to communicate better and collaborate, because sometimes I don't get my way, which I don't like, but you do have to kind of work through that. When I look at my experience at NASA, I would say that one of many cool experiences, and I think I'll share 2 of them with you, is I got to hold, and I was in the right gear, I got to hold a moon rock. And for me, that was particularly poignant because it was in my lifetime that we went to the moon and first landed on the moon, Neil Armstrong, in 1969. So it was very cool to be able to hold a rock like that. And the other thing is that I got to go to Russia and Kazakhstan to see launch when I was there. And I spent a week in Moscow and a week in Kazakhstan, partaking in all the festivities associated with a launch, including the review of human safety to ensure that we, in fact, were ready to fly. That includes weather, mechanical issues on your rocket and your launch system. And, is the space station, kind of ready for everybody, but they're usually always ready for guests because they do a lot of work up there, always prepared and always experimenting in that. So I would say that would be sort of a few examples. I would say too, and maybe this is the unsolicited advice, and I can say this because I'm on the older side, is to think about, you get scared about things, and I get scared. I was scared when I got to testify before Congress, but I went anyway because you can't really say no. But the idea is to get yourself prepared. Like, what are you afraid of? And then try to work on those issues so that when you're in that situation, you can say yes to something, and then you get prepared for it. And then you go into the situation. I mentioned to you, I have jumped out of an airplane. Well, I spent 3-4 hours getting ready to jump out of an airplane, how to land, and how to check my chute. So when I get out of the airplane, the first thing you need to do is make sure your chute opens. And if it doesn't, they teach you how to open and throw your chute there. So there were huge risks jumping out of an airplane, and I was afraid to jump out of an airplane. And I addressed those risks by taking training, and I felt like I could mitigate them. There's still risks associated with flying, but those that I can control, I took on. So really be thoughtful in how you say yes. And if it really scares you, I think sometimes it's okay to say yes. Like I was used to be very afraid of public speaking and not so much now. But I said yes, and all I would do is get ready, just like I did here today. And I brought my friends along for some courage as well.
I love how you applied your knowledge of risk management to your everyday life. That's so awesome. It's so important to take what you do at work and also apply it to everything else as well. So, and I also love that you mentioned family first, because it really is like family always comes first.
You know, it does. And sometimes we need to shut the door and make family go away.
Yeah, that too. Not for Christmas break though.
Yeah, no, not for that. Yep.
Yep. Okay. So I have another question for you. What does your typical day at work look like?
So here's why I laugh. So I'm a planner. Like every day, even now that I have my own little company and I help other people and other companies be successful. And I don't spend any, it's my day is all over the map. But let's talk about when I was the NASA CIO. I would end every evening, very late at night usually, and I'd organize what I'm going to get done. And I'd get prepared for my meetings every day. Some of the meetings I had to spend a lot more time preparing, like if we were going to talk about the James Webb Telescope, which is going to launch hopefully this December 24th, no earlier than this December 24th. So please go online and sign up to watch James Webb Telescope. It's going to be the most powerful telescope that humans have ever built, and we will see things in outer space we've never been able to see. And part of it was inspired by origami. And I bring this up because I plan every day. And so if I went to a meeting about James Webb Telescope, so what do I know about it? Well, I didn't know much. So I'd go through the slides, 150 of them, just getting a sense of what the meeting was to be about so that I could walk in and follow the meeting. And these would be multi-hour meetings. These weren't real 15-minute ones. And then that way I could participate or at least understand what was going on. So each day I prepared for the next day and went over my calendar and made sure I knew what was going on. So if things were missing, as soon as my executive assistant came in, then she and I would go over and make sure I was ready for the day. And just so you guys know, I had a lot of people that reported to me. And so I needed executive assistant, I had a special assistant, had an amazing deputy, had amazing chief information security officer, and so on and so on. And so I'd get ready. But you know what? I'd get into the office and usually something happened the night before, or somebody finally got a chance to catch me in the hallway and they would tell me what's going on. And so my days would change sometimes. I would say, okay, let's plan to meet here because we can shift these things. And my lovely executive assistant, she was fabulous, amazing. She's like, okay, we'll move here, we'll send here, so to this, and they would take care of my day so I could really focus on the content in hand. So my days would begin like on a Monday. We always did calendar review for the next 2 weeks because if I had a speaking engagement, we had to make sure we had materials, press materials ready and things like that. Then I might go to a meeting about a technical issue, like are our systems, a particular system, have an authority to operate. And so we would review its cybersecurity controls, and I would make sure that all the work was done. And I'd make sure somebody looked me in the eye and say, they highly recommend that I sign this authority to operate the system free and clear of 0 reservations, because if you have a reservation, you need to speak up. And so I would encourage them to speak up. And then I might flip into a discussion about how to govern data at NASA. And then I might go off to a meeting about human resource challenges that NASA might be having or other mission areas. And then I might have to review a letter that we were sending off to Congress to respond to a letter from them. And I always loved the letters I got to review. I would get letters from the public, especially from children. And I loved signing off on those letters and making sure they got a NASA sticker. So my days were very variable. I have a plan, and then I'd have first contact with plan, and then I'd have a day, and I'd usually go home pretty exhausted, somewhere between 7:30 and 9 p.m.
Wow, that really is a busy day, but as the CIO, you are over everyone and everything, and you have to make sure all of your operations, your capabilities are working strong.
Yep.
Also, I wanted to let everyone know that I've attached the updates about the James Webb Space Telescope, and also when we upload to YouTube, I'll add that link as well.
That'd be great.
I have another question for you. So, where is the best, coolest place you have ever been, and why?
Oh gosh. All right. Two answers, right? Oh, and let me give you a bit on the scope of the job, and let me get the answers. So the NASA network is a global network, and it does provide services off the globe, which I've already talked about, right? Bringing down data from our satellites. So that at any given day, there were 65,000 people on the network between the NASA civil servants, those of us that were NASA employees, as well as our contractor workforce. And so that's a lot of folks that were on the network and asking for services from our laptops, which I'm using a laptop right now, mobile devices, applications, and a whole lot of other things to do that. So it just gives you, it's a pretty large scope for a position. So two answers. So one of them is, so I'm here in Washington, D.C., and several decades ago, the United States government received from the Japanese government the cherry blossom trees, cherry blossom trees. And every spring, cherry blossoms come out. And as a kid, I would go to the cherry blossom festival, and pretty much when my parents would take me down to see the cherry blossoms. So I had a meeting in Japan, in Tokyo, and I was there during cherry blossom festival in Tokyo. And so it was a really cool experience, you know, growing up as a kid, loving, and I still love the cherry blossoms, to be able to go over and see them in the country that gave our country this as a gift. And it is amazing. I can't wait till someday, post-COVID, that I can take my family to Japan, and we will be able to go there and see the cherry blossoms them and just see how spectacular it is. So it was really a neat connection with my childhood with my adulthood. And who would have ever imagined? I never would have imagined I would have gotten to Japan, and that it is a beautiful, beautiful country. And one of them is actually a funny experience. So one of the experiences that I go back to going to Kazakhstan, and I really did see a camel on Wednesday, which is called Hump Day. And it just made me laugh out loud. So here I was at this amazing thing, watching US astronauts blast off to the International Space Station, and I saw a camel on Wednesday, which is Hump Day, and all I could do was laugh. And I took a big picture of it, and it's always in my story when I talk about my trips to Russia, because it was really funny.
I love it. That's so awesome. Oh my gosh. I love how you had a serious childhood moment vacation or work trip, and then you moved it to seeing camels on Wednesday. That's awesome. I love it. All right. So I have one last question for you, and this is the most important question. So, what advice would you give to the audience watching?
So I talked about really thinking through and saying yes, even if you're scared. And I'm not talking about the challenging issues that you may be faced as teenagers, right? You know, do I smoke? Do I not smoke? Do I drink? Do I not drink? Something like that. I'm not talking about those kind of risks in that behavior, but really think about, if something makes you afraid, you should probably still say yes. Like, I almost didn't apply to the position to be the NASA Chief Information Officer. And if I hadn't done that, I would have never had this opportunity to address you guys and say, just, you know, always reach for the stars. But the most important thing that I have learned along the way, and it's related to really thinking about what you say yes to, even when you're afraid, because actually that's what courage is and bravery. It's still being afraid. That doesn't go away. That actually is probably not a bad thing. Sometimes is to have a little bit of that fear and the butterflies in your stomach when you say yes to something. But mindset is everything. If someone says something to you and you're insulted by it, you actually have a choice. You have a couple of choices. You could say, I'm not bothered by that. And so then if you're not bothered by it, you won't be bothered by it. That's the mindset piece. You could be bothered by it, and you could have a conversation with somebody and say, when you say this, you make me feel like this. Please don't do that. So that's another choice. And again, it's the mindset to stick up for yourself in the way you want to be treated. And mindset is also when you're really tired and somebody comes up to you in the parking lot, not that this hasn't happened to me, and had a complaint about your IT services. And here I was, feet from getting in my car and heading home. At that point, the most important thing for me to do was to do my job, which was to turn to that person and say, please tell me about it. And my mindset was on them and listening to them and really hearing them. And then taking that, getting in my car and having someone take care of it. Or maybe I could take care of it in that conversation. But I also didn't have the mindset I would let it go, not let that make me have a bad evening because something that my people were doing, they complained about. That would be taking too much ownership, and that would make it bad when I went home to my family. So mindset really matters, and we all get really tired, and it's okay to have bad days and be cranky and say, I can't take it anymore. But try to spend 95% of your time in a place where people matter and you matter. And if you can spend 95% of your time in that spot, in that really cool mindset, then every day will be magnificent. And so that's my advice to all of you is mindset really matters. And if you're feeling pretty cranky, then find somebody to talk to. You're never alone, and really work on that mindset.
Thank you, Renee. I think that not only impacted the K through 12 audience, but also me as a college student. That's such great advice to just keep pursuing no matter what you're going through or how you're feeling, and just keep pushing and shoot for the moon, the stars, anything beyond.
Exactly that. And you got to take breaks, right? Not saying you always push on, take that break, but absolutely. And that's what makes the difference.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you so much for being here. So,
my pleasure.
So for the audience, I'm going to launch a quick post poll. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let me know if you see it. Renee, do you see the poll?
I do see that.
Awesome. Good.
All right.
Okay.
Well, based on what I can see, I'm answering.
Okay, and please follow us on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we will upload all of our conversations. And thank you for joining us. And another big thank you for Renee being here today. And
great. Thank you again, and everybody have a very safe, healthy, and find happiness in 2022.
Yes. Have a good night and Merry Christmas to all. Bye, guys.